In the blistering heat of a late summer afternoon on the far edge of the New Mexico frontier, rancher Luke Halston spotted something that made him pull his horse to an abrupt stop. A dark shape collapsed beside the dry creek bed, unmoving, half covered in dust. Luke had been riding the fence line for hours, thinking only of finishing repairs before sunset, yet the sight tugged at something he could not ignore. As he approached, the shape resolved into a man, young, wounded, breathing shallowly, and unmistakably native. Blood had darkened his side where an arrow shaft had snapped and been crudely pulled free. His lips were cracked, his skin burning with fever, and the empty gourd beside him said enough. He had no water left. Luke dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on the hard earth. There had been tensions in the region lately, rumors of raids, whispers of settlers preparing for violence, but none of that mattered in this moment. Here was a human being dying of thirst. With steady hands, Luke knelt and uncapped his canteen. The young man's eyes flickered open in fear, but Luke's voice was gentle, steady, the voice he used with frightened horses. "Easy, son. You're safe. I'm just giving you some water." The wounded man hesitated, but instinct won. He drank greedily, every swallow like a battle between life and death. Luke let him drink until the man's trembling eased, then poured a slow trickle across the cracked lips and fevered brow. He didn't know who the man was, where he had come from, or what dangers followed him, but Luke had lived by one rule taught by his old mother: if you can save a life, you must try. As the young man drifted into an exhausted sleep, Luke glanced across the wide valley, wondering if someone was searching for him, friends, family, or enemies. The wind carried no answers. So Luke lifted the injured stranger into his saddle and began the long ride back to his ranch, resolved to tend to him until help came. By the time Luke reached his homestead, sweat soaked both him and his horse. His ranch hands had left for the day, leaving the place quiet, making it easier for Luke to tend to the injured man in the privacy of his small bunkhouse. He cleaned the wound, gave him cool water, and sat through the long night, offering the stranger quiet company. The fever broke just before dawn. When the young man opened his eyes properly for the first time, confusion clouded his features, but gratitude followed just as quickly. His voice was rough as gravel. "Why, help me?" Luke simply shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "Because you needed someone, and I was here." The young man stared at him for a moment, searching his face, then said with effort, "My name is Tala." Luke nodded. "I'm Luke Halston." "You're safe here, Tala." But Tala's eyes darkened with sudden worry. "No. Not safe. Others, coming." Luke assumed he meant that his family or tribe might be searching for him, but he had no sense of how soon they would arrive, or how they might react to finding him on the ranch of a white settler. He had heard stories of misunderstandings that spiraled into violence in seconds. Yet he refused to regret helping Tala. If anything, he felt a deeper conviction: compassion had to be shown without fear if it was to mean anything at all. The morning passed quietly until a distant thunder stirred the ground beneath Luke's boots' hooves. Many hooves. Luke stepped outside, scanning the horizon. Dust rose like a desert storm. As the shapes sharpened, his breath caught. Riders. Dozens. Then scores. An entire native tribe, warriors in full paint, elders mounted behind them, women carrying supplies, approached in a great sweeping wave of horses. Luke stiffened, but he did not reach for his rifle. He simply stood tall, hands visible, heart pounding but steady. He knew that what happened next depended not on weapons but on truth. The riders slowed as they neared the ranch, fanning out in a wide semicircle, forming an imposing wall of human strength and ancestral pride. The leader, an older man with braided silver hair and eyes sharp as flint, rode forward. His presence carried weight, authority, wisdom, the gravity of generations. "Where is my son?" he demanded, not with anger but with the deep fear of a father who has nearly lost the most precious thing in the world. Luke gestured calmly. "Inside. He's alive. Hurt, but alive. I gave him water and tended his wound." Murmurs rippled through the riders. The chief's expression shifted, relief flickered, though wariness remained. "Why would you help him?" the chief asked, "when our peoples distrust each other? When others might have left him to die?" Luke met his gaze without flinching. Because no man deserves to die alone in the dirt.
Not your son. Not anyone.
Something softened in the chief's features, like ice cracking after a long winter. He slid off his horse and entered the bunkhouse. Luke remained outside, surrounded by riders who watched him silently, their faces unreadable. Minutes passed like hours until finally the chief emerged. Tala followed, leaning heavily on him but alive, eyes bright with gratitude. The chief approached Luke, standing so close that Luke could hear the steady beat of his breath. "You saved my son's life," the chief said slowly, deliberately. "Such acts are not forgotten among my people. We honor those who honor life." Then something unexpected happened, something Luke could never have imagined. The chief raised his hand, and the entire tribe dismounted in one unified movement, a sound like rolling thunder passing through the earth. Warriors, elders, children, the whole community stood before Luke, heads bowed in a gesture of profound respect. Luke's throat tightened. He had never seen anything so humbling. The chief continued, his voice resonant with emotion. "There are those who bring harm. There are those who bring fear. But you brought water. You brought compassion when no one was watching. That kind of man restores balance to the world." Luke felt his heart swell, overcome by the sheer humanity of the moment. He had done only what seemed right, yet the impact was reaching further than he could have imagined. The chief stepped forward and pressed a carved wooden emblem into Luke's hand, a symbol of peace and alliance, etched with the tribe's sacred markings. "This," the chief said, "is given only to those who have proven themselves brothers to our people. You are one of them now." But the moment didn't end there. The tribe, recognizing the depth of Luke's kindness, offered something rare and sacred, a blessing. They formed a circle around the ranch, chanting softly, honoring the place where Tala had been saved. Luke stood in the center, overwhelmed by the beauty of the voices rising into the sky. The chant was old, older than memory, filled with gratitude, unity, and the quiet promise that compassion binds humanity more tightly than fear ever could. Tears blurred Luke's vision, he wiped them quickly, embarrassed, but the chief noticed and touched his shoulder. "Do not hide that," he said. "Tears show that your heart still recognizes the sacredness of life." As the ceremony ended, Tala approached Luke and clasped his hand tightly. "If not for you," he said, "my father would be mourning, and my people would have lost a son. You gave me a second chance." Luke shook his head gently. "I only gave you water. You found the strength to live." Tala smiled, the kind of smile that carries a lifetime of gratitude. "Sometimes," he said, "water is not just water. Sometimes it is hope." Throughout the afternoon, the tribe remained on the ranch grounds, cooking food, tending to their horses, laughing with Tala, celebrating his life saved. Children played near the water trough, elders shared stories, and for the first time in a long while, Luke felt the heavy weight of loneliness lift from his home. He realized how much the presence of community, genuine and connected, could transform a place. Even his ranch seemed different, warmer, fuller, touched by something greater than simple existence. As shadows lengthened and the sun dipped behind the ridge, painting the sky in brilliant golds and reds, the tribe prepared to depart. The chief mounted his horse last and looked down at Luke with a steady, affectionate gaze. "What you did today," he said, "will echo for generations." Luke felt humbled. He had never sought praise, only to do what was right. "I just hope your boy heals," Luke replied. The chief nodded. "He will. Because someone had the courage to see him as a human being, not an enemy." The tribe began to ride off, their silhouettes etched against the fiery horizon. Tala turned back once, raising his hand in farewell. Luke raised his in return. As the last rider disappeared into the distance, the ranch fell quiet again, but not the same quiet as before. There was a new peace, a sense of connection that stretched far beyond the fences and fields. Luke stood alone beneath the vast sky, holding the carved emblem the chief had given him, feeling the weight of its meaning. This day had changed him, not because an entire tribe had come to honor him, but because he had witnessed the ripple effect of a simple, selfless act. He understood now, in a way he never had before, that kindness was not small. It was powerful, capable of bridging worlds, healing old wounds, and drawing people together across the divides of history. As the wind swept gently across the fields, Luke whispered to himself, if only more people realized how far a little compassion can reach. And in that moment, beneath the fading glow of the evening sun, he felt not just hopeful but certain that in a world filled with fear and misunderstanding, acts of humanity had the power to transform everything. All it took was offering water to a stranger in need. All it took was being brave enough to care.